Hi everybody, today I'm going to show you how to make a super easy, fast, and delicious pastry dough called pâte à choux. It is the dough that's used to make cream puffs, eclairs, profiteroles, many desserts. You can use it in many ways, and you can also freeze the puffs when you're done with them. So if you make a giant batch, you can kind of dole them out between a couple different desserts and maximize your stuff that way. So we're going to start out cooking some flour into some water and butter on the stove. And then we're going to transfer it to our mixer and beat in a bunch of eggs, and that's going to create the dough that we are then going to pipe using our piping bags onto sheets and bake. So let's get started. Okay, we are starting on the stove here. We have 1 cup of water, 1 stick of butter, a half a teaspoon of salt, and a teaspoon of sugar that we brought to a boil. See how we're getting a little boil there? So we're going to turn off the heat. We're going to take it off the heat. Turn off the heat. We're going to put in a cup of flour and mix it in with our wooden spoon. You don't want to use a metal spoon. You don't want to scrape your pan. So we're going to mix in this flour. It's going to absorb all this water. And we're going to turn our heat back on. Kind of medium heat until this kind of forms a dough. I'm going to keep stirring it around, try to keep our flour broken up. If you see any little pockets of flour, kind of break them up with your spoon. And just keep stirring this around till it cooks it a little bit. We want to make sure, it's kind of like making a giant ball of roux. And when it comes together all in a ball like that and kind of makes a film on your pan, that's how you know it's finished. So we're going to go a minute past that just to make sure we cook our flour enough. And for this recipe, you can use all-purpose flour or you can use bread flour if you want. Either way, and given the conditions right now, I know sometimes people have flour that they don't know what to do with, so you can use bread flour for this recipe also. So we're going to cook this just a minute more. Make sure we get all that starchy flour taste out of there, especially with the bread flour. And then we are going to take this off the heat and transfer it to the bowl of our stand mixer with the paddle attachment. Okay, we transferred our dough mixture to the bowl. I have this paddle attachment. I'm going to start beating it on a medium speed just to kind of start cooling it off. And then after about a minute, I'm going to start putting in the eggs one by one. I have 4 eggs here. And that's what's going to incorporate into this and make a dough. So let's get going with that. Okay, so you see we've got a really eggy dough. At certain points when you're mixing in the egg, it'll look like it's starting to curdle, but you want to just keep going and it'll come back together as a dough. I'm just going to give this a last scrape all the way to the bottom. Make sure we don't have any little bits down there that aren't getting mixed in. And then we'll mix it for just about 30 seconds more, and then we can move to our next step. Okay, I'm gonna pop this guy off, make sure we get all and it's kind of like a kind of smooth paste consistency. It smells really kind of eggy, really floury. We haven't put any flavorings in or any vanilla or anything like that, so you're not gonna get any smell like that. So it's just gonna smell like a real floury, eggy dough. And this is what we've got here. It shouldn't be super runny. It should be kind of, you know, like it can hold its shape a little bit. If it's runny, maybe that means you didn't cook your flour quite enough. So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna take our piping bag, and I picked a piping bag that has the biggest kind of tip that I could find so I can make you know, I don't want it to be too textured. I want kind of like a little blob of dough. So remember from our cake video, your coupler goes into the bag first, and then you trim just behind where the coupler is going to be, and you put that back in. And then your metal tip goes on next, whatever tip you're using, and then it gets screwed down by this coupler. So that's how that works. And then I'm going to fold this bag inside out, and I'm going to hold on to the bottom tip with my hand and make kind of little cup, and then I'm going to fill this up with this dough. Okay, once I've got this filled, I'm just gonna kind of go over my hand and turn the bag inside out. The goal is to not get it all over the top of the bag. And I'm just going to twist my bag until I start seeing some dough come out of the top there. And remember, from cake decorating, it's the pressure of my hand, the pressure from twisting this and my hand on this bigger part that's gonna kind of squeeze the dough out of the tube. You wanna make sure you line your pan. I have a silicone liner on this pan, but parchment also works super well. Or if you don't have either of those things, you'll wanna grease your pan where you're gonna put the puffs, just so that they're nice and you don't get any sticking there. So what I'm gonna do is make little golf ball sized swirls, and probably, you know, an inch or so apart, inch and a half, so they have enough space to rise. So let's do that. Okay, so now I have all my circle puffs on here. They're spaced nicely. They're really, you know, as evenly shaped as I could get them. You want them all to be the same size so that they cook nicely. So I'm gonna put these into the oven. They are going to go 400 degrees for 10 minutes. Then we're gonna knock the heat down to 350 degrees and bake another 10 minutes. And then what I'm gonna do is take a knife, and I'll show you that part when I get to it, and kind of just put a little poke in the top of them to let the steam out. And I'm gonna leave them in the warm oven for another, turn the heat off, but leave them in the warm oven for another 10 minutes. And that just helps the steam escape, and they crisp up, and that way they won't kind of plop in on themselves as they're cooling. Okay, so we'll get these in the oven. Okay, our puffs are all baked, and then I turned off the heat. And like I said, I'm just gonna poke a tiny vent hole in each one. Like so, just to let the air escape. And then we're gonna leave these in this oven turned off with the heat off for another 10 minutes. Hi, okay, our little puffs are out of the oven. They had time to dry in there. Look how adorable they are. They have kind of a crisp outer crust, and then the inside is gonna be really kind of custardy and eggy and delicious. So you can get a piping bag with a small tip and fill it, poke it through the little hole on the top that we made for the steam, and give it a squirt of pastry cream. You can cut off the little tops, fill it with a little scoop of ice cream, pop the top back on, freeze them that way for profiteroles. You can dust them with powdered sugar and eat them as candies. I'm gonna show you on Instagram how to make ganache, which is a chocolate, very delicious, kind of, not fudgy, but like a really rich chocolate sauce that you would use that you can also use to dip strawberries, that type of thing. You could cover them with ganache. You can do many, many things with these. If you wanted to pipe it out longer, you can make bigger puffs, smaller puffs. You can pipe it out longer and make an eclair type of thing and cover that with ganache and fill it with whipped cream or pastry cream or pudding, whatever you want to fill it with. So there you go, pat or choux.